What the Sam Hill's going on here?
The Rewatch Podcast presents the Lois and Clark Rewatch, dedicated to the series Lois and Clark, The New Adventures of Superman on ABC. Join us each week as we investigate the origins of the Man of Steel and uncover crime in Metropolis. Send your feedback to the Rewatch Podcast at gmail.com. Join us on Facebook at facebook.com/rewatchpodcast or follow us on Twitter at rewatchpod.
Oh, hey! Let's get back to it.
And welcome back to the Rewatch Podcast and our Lois and Clark Rewatch. I'm Corey.
And I'm just appalled at the treatment of the frogs in this episode. I am on the line right now with PETA, and we are not taking this thing down, damn it.
It is a bit harsh.
That's right.
Well, thank you for joining us, everyone. We are back discussing 2 more episodes of Lois and Clark. And this week's headline reads, Now Jeopardy! Bum, bum, bum.
Coming up next, now Jeopardy.
Yes, and we're discussing I Now Pronounce You and Double Jeopardy. But before we get into it, a couple of follow-up items.
Right, so going back to the Tempest episode, you know, with the alternate universe where Lois was dead because she died in the Congo. I guess there was a theory that went around that Annie L. over on the Zoomway forums reminded us of that she really liked. The theory was that in our world, you know, Clark was traveling the world. You know, we even had that story about how he did the whole gun running article. The theory is that since Clark was traveling the world, he did something inadvertently that saved Lois, so that in our world, she lived. Whereas in the alt universe, Clark never really traveled the world. He was always taught to hide his powers, so he wasn't there to do whatever he did that would have saved Lois in his world.
Interesting theory. I like it.
Yeah, I like that. I think that's pretty cool. That's a pretty neat theory. Never thought about it before, but yeah, that makes sense. And then we also have a new listener over there on the Zoomway forums, Houston Alley, and apparently Sitcom Tom has been sitting down on the job. We had Shelley Long, of course, guest star back in the Ultrawoman episode, and I failed to mention that, of course, she was Diane in Cheers, which, you know, I think I just passed over because I thought everybody sort of knew that, but I should have mentioned it as Sitcom Tom. It was my duty. So I did not do that. And then also, now I missed this one completely because she just looks so different. Now, Houston Alley is just catching up on the podcast. She just started listening. I'm assuming it's a woman, but I could be wrong. If I'm wrong, I'm sorry. They just started listening just a couple weeks ago. So they're back a bit farther. In the episode with Lois's old college roommate, I forget her name, but she wrote the book about how technology is killing us.
All right, yeah.
Remember that? Well, that woman, that friend of hers, she's played by Melora Hardin, which I know because she plays Jan Levison Gold on The Office, the U.S. version of The Office. She just looks so different, like back in that episode. She has like the 80s style hair, you know, all duded up, and you know, she's like not like so serious and like, you know, like a boss type character like she is in The Office. So I didn't even recognize her, but we missed her as well. There's a little bit for Sitcom Tom to do some more research on. And then she also mentioned this. We had a discussion about Tempest, and you were thinking that he was a relative of Superman. And with all the talk that we did that episode of Back to the Future, she said, I can't believe you guys missed the obvious thing is that if he goes back, if he's a relative of Superman, if he goes back and kills Superman, he's essentially killing himself, which makes sense. We missed that.
I'm pretty sure I thought of that at the time. I guess I just didn't mention it.
Yeah.
Because that's why I was confused about it too, right?
Yeah,
when we brought it up, I
exactly.
was like, he wants to kill Superman, but he's related to him? I don't know.
Right.
But you're right, yeah, he would, I guess, fade away like Marty.
Exactly. Erased from existence.
So I guess that would nullify the whole being related to Superman.
And then she also mentioned about the upcoming wedding arc, that as a teenager, it felt like it went on forever. for her, but as an adult, she's seen it again, and she said she kind of likes it just fine, which is, she said, seems to be like fighting words, depending on which forums you go to, but we'll get into that as we discuss these episodes. So
Yeah.
we appreciate that. I'm glad you're listening now. That's awesome.
Yeah, absolutely. So let's get into it. The first episode discussion today, I Now Pronounce You, written by Chris Rupenthal, directed by Jim Pohl, and this originally aired on February 11th of 1996.
Then, about 5 years ago, scientists found out that the Doppelbufo frog cell nucleus contains DNA that, when grafted to the DNA from another animal, helped make perfect biological copies to whatever the second animal was.
You mean clone them?
Yes. So far, it's only been tried on mice.
So the only thing that was taken was these frogs?
That's right. None of the more valuable pets, just the Doppelbufos. I came in about 7 this morning and discovered the front door had been jimmied.
A rogue medical researcher, no doubt.
Is there anything else you can tell us about these frogs?
No. Except they have a very fast metabolism due to some unusual enzymes they have, which makes them hungry most of the time. And if they can't make enough of their own enzymes, they'll happily turn on each other for them.
As Lois and Clark deal with problem after problem with their wedding plans, including overbearing mothers and cousins and strange anonymous wedding presents like dead roses and crushed wedding cakes, they turn to Perry for a story to help distract them from the stress. While the story starts out as a simple story of exotic frogs robbed from a pet store, they soon find out that the frogs have the ability to be used to create clones. As they investigate, they discover that the head of the Secret Service for the President of the United States was caught on camera stealing the frogs. This leads them to a one Dr. Mamba who actually researches cloning and accelerated growth and happens to be in Metropolis this week. While Clark heads off as Superman to help out in India, Lois visits Mamba, and while she doesn't get answers, she does get trouble as Mamba sends the Secret Service head to follow her. When he faces off Lois and her mother, they manage to overtake him and are witness to his wounds rapidly healing, revealing that he is actually a clone. More information is revealed that leads back to Lex Luthor's companies, causing Lois to suspect Lex is somehow attempting to kill the president despite being in jail. She attempts to warn the president of the danger, but it's revealed that the president himself is a clone. Superman arrives just in time as Mamba attempts to shoot Lois while she punches the president to prove that he has rapid healing abilities, and the Secret Service take him into custody. Lois and Clark finally head to the church, and after some last-minute changes, they proceed to get married by Perry, and the wedding goes off without a hitch. However, as the two prepare for bed that evening, Lois reaches into her makeup kit and pulls out a frog, revealing that she is actually also a clone.
I think everyone's glad to have the night off.
Except for the toast. Daddy loves giving toast.
Oh, so I guess right about now he'd probably be saying how sorry he was to have left home because he missed out on seeing his little girl grow up into the most lovely woman that anyone has ever seen.
And my mother would say it served him right. But then she'd admit that if teaching their child the value of love was important, they'd done their job. And your parents would remind me that the son that came to them as the most special of gifts, they now shared with me. And they'd ask me to protect him with all the strength that he uses to protect others.
Now, I guess it's the groom's toast. I love you, Lois.
And I love you, Clark. You're the man I never thought I'd meet.
All right, So let's investigate this one.
So once again, our reactions comparing the script to the screen. We have a little extra bit in the beginning here where Lois tips the delivery man a few coins. That's all she has in her pocket. And he's like, oh, thanks, something like that. A little bit.
I'll get a soda on the way out.
There was this weird little bit with Martha when they were in the hotel talking to the manager. And I was just seemed out of character for Martha, like Martha says, here, I'll take care of this, because they don't have a room. And she says, excuse me, we'd like to speak to the manager. I'm a personal friend of his. And the clerk goes, I am the manager. And she's like, oh, really? Well, that facelift really worked. You look fabulous. I'm like, that seems so out of character for her. I know she's hip and everything, but that's a little bit much, I think. I could see like her father saying that, or even her mother, doing something like that. But it just seems out of character for Martha. Lois's mother, much more likely.
It would be funnier if Jonathan tried to do it and it just came off like super awkward.
Right, exactly. So Lois, actually, there was a scene where Lois actually asks Martha to help her deal with her mother, because she's just going nuts. And, Martha says, yes, it's okay. Don't worry. Your mother's just anxious, and that's when Ellen comes out of the room and she says, I think we should do, lobster instead of beef for the rehearsal dinner. And Lois is like, it's the same scene that we had in there, just a little bit different, a little extended.
Like, seems a little bit over the top, maybe.
Yeah, just a little bit. I don't think they want to show Lois turning to Martha too much over her own mother.
Because they deal with it later, and she's like, no,
exactly.
That's not true.
When the frog nerd says that the frogs will turn on each other if they don't get enough enzymes, Lois had a line that they took out where she goes, that sounds just like my parents. Which is funny, but they don't fight that much in this episode, not like they did last time.
Well, like, how often do they see each other, really?
All right, now, when Mom was talking to the two clones, because they, they're childlike, he says, let's go back to clone school. And he explains, you're the president and you're the president's, Secret Service agent, whatever. It was a little bit longer where he goes, okay, let's go back to clone school. And then one of the clones says, can I have some Jell-O? And Mama's like, no, you can't have Jell-O. Now shut up. And then the scene goes on, just like it was in the episode. It's just funny. Can I have some Jell-O? That's what a kid would do, All right, now, this is major. This is a major scene change. So originally, the dinner scene, they lost their restaurant, Board of Health or whatever. So they're all at the Daily Planet, I guess. And Perry says, well, I have a suggestion. It's never closed, but you gotta like Chinese. And they cut to the scene of them eating in the conference room at the Daily Planet, eating Chinese food. Everybody. And Ellen is complaining. They really went over the top with her complaining in the script. And she's complaining about the Chinese food for the beef is too rare for her, and she's going on, and Lois is like, oh, mother. And finally Martha says, well, would you like to trade? I like rare. So they trade, And then there's speeches. There's a bunch of speeches given by Perry, Clark, and Lois. Like Perry gives a nice little speech about them being great reporters and they're going to be a great marriage, and Clark gives a very touching speech, much more than what he did in the aired episode, which was just a basic, like, I love you, the very basic speech, but still good. And then Lois also gives a very nice speech of her own to Clark. So it's really extended. Like, this would have taken up some time. This would have taken some airtime for sure. And that's not even the end of the scene yet. Because then, after they do the speeches, a random Daily Planet staffer, maybe it's that woman that you're always talking about. What's her name? What's her name?
Like Diane or something, was it?
Diane, yeah. So let's say Diane comes in with the car rental information from the picture, and so they got the information about Dr. Mamba, from that picture, from the car rental information. And Lois says, Jimmy, can you get a number, for Mamba? And he runs out to get the number. And the staffer comes in again with the crushed cake, that they had delivered to Lois and Clark's apartment there. So there's that. And then I guess it would cut to commercial. And then the next part of the scene is Ellen yelling off screen and arguing with Sam Lane, and they're going back and forth about being overbearing. And she comes across the scene and says, I'm leaving Lois. I'm not going to be a part of this if he's there. And, she runs off, and Sam is yelling after her as they leave the planet. And Lois, it's weird. Like, this episode, the writers, I don't think they captured the feeling of the characters in this script very well, because Lois is standing there and she says, they're ruining my wedding. I wish they hadn't come. And it was almost like a tantrum. It just seems out of character, I mean, she would say something, but that just felt like a weird line for her to say.
Yeah, exactly. It's more in character for her to be pushing those emotions down and just letting it go.
That's not even the end of the scene yet. So they run out, and in the background, this was described as there being one of those silent radio ticker type tape machines in the background of the Daily Planet where like the news ticks off from around the world. And I don't even know if the Daily Planet would use that. That sounds like very old technology. But whatever reason, they described it, and it's ticking off the news. And on it, Clark sees that it's ticking off about the hurricane in India. So he sees that, and Lois says, all right, you got to go, you know. And so he takes off to take care of that. And when Jimmy comes in, Lois just makes an excuse that Clark's out trying to calm down her dad. And then the episode goes on. It was a major change. Very major change.
Yeah, they kind of condensed it down and made it a bit more intimate. They canceled the whole rehearsal dinner.
Exactly.
And just had Lois and Clark at home, so...
Exactly.
Yeah, major change.
Yeah, I mean, parts of it I thought would have been neat to hear the speeches, you know, given by Perry, Clark, and Lois. But the rest of it, you know, it's like give or take. So the Mamba meeting, when Lois goes to see him, is pretty much the same, but the dialogue's a little different. Like she refuses his advances. You know, he makes these advances in the aired version, but she's sort of like, no, just the questions, you know, da da da. But with this, with the script, she actually like cuts him down a little bit with her comments, you know, like he never mentions his underwear like he does in the aired version, but he does mention his suit, you know, I've got this, and I've got a suit. You want to see it? And she's like, not if you're in it. And he goes, oh my, you know, cutting me down right away, you know. And then near the end of the scene, he says, well, you know, she's asking questions he doesn't want to answer. And he says, well, you know, I'm getting tired. I was just getting ready for bed. Are you busy? And she says, for about 1 million years. So she's really, she's kind of mean, you know, which makes sense. You know, that's what you do. There's another scene with Lois and Ellen. And Lois comes in, and Ellen is watching the news, and she turns it off. And she says, well, the president just did another 180 and changed his mind about, you know, something that was going on in North Africa. And they have a talk about, you know, why she's doing what she's doing, and she wants her there at the wedding. And, you know, Ellen says, you know, it's just so hard to give up, you know, being concerned about you. I'm your mother, you know, I just want to meddle naturally. That's what I do. You know, that's what mothers do. And, you know, she goes over Lois's past boyfriends that have hurt her and how it's just hard for her to stop trying to protect her. You know, she says, I'll show up. No, I'll be at your wedding. I'm a lot more forgiving now than I was 10 years ago, is what she said. Yeah. So it was a nice scene. I mean, they did it fine in the aired version, too. I think it was either way would have worked. Perry's wedding speech was a little different, just some different words as he was getting them married. But the biggest thing was at the very end, I guess he imitates Elvis, and he's like, you know, all this stuff, you know, wedding, love, and, you know, togetherness. He says, well, as the king might say, now it's time for the big finish, you know, and I guess they were supposed to kiss right after that. So it would have been funny to see because we love Elvis with Perry's little take on Elvis.
Yeah, I would have liked to have seen a bit more Elvis in that thing, especially because he links it to being like he got his license to wed people.
Oh, yeah.
through like some Elvis church or something.
Yeah, the Church of Blue Suede Deliverance.
Yeah.
This is kind of interesting. The episode was supposed to end with Lois and Clark married and happy, finished. That's it. No clone. There was not supposed to be a Lois clone. But apparently, the network, they weren't real happy with the romantic elements that they kept putting in. Like, they didn't like the push. Because remember, they wanted more of the focus on action. So they didn't like all the romance stuff. And they demanded at the last minute a rewrite for the ending. So that they could keep this going on, and it was supposed to line up with what was going on in the comics, because in the comics, when this episode aired that week, the engagement of Lois and Clark in the comics was off. They had canceled it. The characters, something happened in there, and they had canceled the engagement. So it was going to be off for a while, and they wanted it to sync up with the comics as well. Major change there.
Mystery revealed.
And then finally, our illustrious pastor that we were supposed to have, of course, played by Brad Garrett, he actually has a link to Superman in a couple more ways, because in the next year, he would actually go on to play Bibbo, who we're going to see in the next episode. He would go on to play Bibbo in the animated Superman series in about a year. And then a couple years after that, he would go on to play Lobo, who in the Justice League cartoon, an intergalactic bounty hunter. So he has some Superman ties as well, besides Lois and Clark.
Nice. Cool. Yep. Awesome tie-in.
Threatening gifts, weird frogs, my fiance's typhoon fighting in India. It's not even 8 o'clock. What's next?
Lois, I'm not coming to your wedding.
What?
Your father says I'm too controlling, that I'm driving you crazy, and I can't leave things alone, so I am leaving things alone. Send photos.
You are being unreasonable.
Unreasonable and controlling. I don't know why no one mentioned that before.
Well, I have repeatedly for years.
And what did I say?
That I shouldn't wear bangs, that red isn't my color, that I've gained weight, that I slouch when I stand. Maybe you weren't listening.
I'm really that difficult? No wonder you turn to Martha.
Oh, I do not turn to Martha.
Lois, I'm unreasonable and controlling, not blind.
Well, I would rather turn to you, Mother. You're my mother. Face it, you're not easy.
I know.
Clark is the best thing in my life, and I almost missed him because I was too busy controlling my work, my feelings, everything. I got lucky. He made me notice him.
I just wanted your wedding to be perfect.
Well, I'm marrying the man I love. It is perfect.
All right. Well, maybe I have been a little over-concerned, but you see, that's a mother's job. And if I let that go, what have I got left?
Everything you had before and more. We'll be friends. And I expect my friends at my wedding.
You were so manipulative.
Well, I learned from the best.
Oh, I love you.
All right, well, let's get into the main story. And our lead this week, The Wayward Wedding.
Yes.
It's a little bit cheesy. It opens with this going to the chapel riff.
Yes.
But I did love that the date on the invitation that fills the screen is the date that this airs. February 11th.
Mm-hmm.
But we're actually 4 days off from the wedding. And Clark is trying to calm Lois down.
Yeah, she's really freaking out.
Yeah, and she gets this package of dead roses. Now, did you think Lex immediately?
No.
I did. I have to say. As soon as I go, I'm like, Lex is like messing with them.
Even having seen this before, I didn't think of it. Later on, when she got the cake, I thought of it. But then I was trying to think, wait, didn't he die? I'm like, oh, no. He came back, and then he got in jail. So I was like, all right, yeah. So I didn't get it right at first.
Well, I was holding out hope that John Shea would come back.
Yes.
But at the same time, I was like, this is their way of tying Lex into it. If we don't see him, you know, they can just be like, Lex has been messing with us. Oh, damn you from prison. But yeah, it's a slow burn, you know. They kind of play that. That's a big throwaway thing. And you kind of forget about it until the cake shows up later.
Yeah, exactly.
And then again, I'm like, oh, Lex. But things pretty much get off to a pretty bad start with the wedding. Their parents come into town, and there's this storm that's hitting, and all the hotel rooms are booked. They can't get into the hotel. And the president is there?
Yes.
For whatever reason. Played by, of all people, Fred Willard.
Love it.
It makes sense because of where it goes with the clones and stuff. But I was like, seriously? Fred Willard to play the president? Okay.
I love Fred Willard. He's funny.
It is a bit of fun. And Lois begs Perry for a story. She wants to get back to work because she's just going crazy. So she's like, give us like the stupidest little story that we can knock out today. So he puts her on this story about a frog theft from a local pet store. And we get this information from this weird pet store guy.
He's very strange.
About the Doppelbufo frogs. And
yes.
I have to say, best fake name ever. I just...
Doppelbufo.
It just rolls off the tongue, doesn't it? Doppelbufo.
Yes, it does.
And he talks about how they found out how the cells of the Doppelbufo frog, when mixed with like other cells, creates replicas. And this is going to be our base for making clones.
Yes.
So how do you feel about this?
Well, now you remember, back when they were talking about the Superman clone, Batman, didn't they mentioned frogs in that episode?
I don't quite remember, but if
yeah, there was something about frogs in there, and they didn't, because that was Lex's whole thing, and there was something about frogs in there, but they didn't, explore it, and I didn't say anything about it because I didn't want to, ruin, I knew that frogs were going to come into play again. So I was like, oh, that's interesting that they mentioned something back then about it. I think it's weird. I don't, it's not my favorite part of the whole series, but I go with it. I've accepted it.
Yeah, it's a bit silly, really, isn't it?
Mm-hmm, yeah.
That these frogs can create clones. But it's like you say, you kind of go with it because you're like, sure, why not? And they link it to this guy named Dr. Mamba.
Yes.
Weird name. And they find that because the clone that he has made of the president and his Secret Service guy, they're the ones who stole the frogs. So now she's totally freaked out because this short story that they were supposed to do is now a matter of national security. So she's that could only happen to us, Clark. Jeez. Yeah, it just really starts getting crazy. And that's when the cake arrives with this letter warning her that marrying Clark will be the beginning of the end, quote unquote. They still play out this thing where Superman is needed over in India for a hurricane. And I don't know which way would be better, that ticker tape thing or the fact that all of a sudden Clark is just like, what's that? Your next door neighbor's television. Quick, turn on the TV.
At least that's more modern, when they just start describing the ticker tape thing, I was like, what? Who would have used that in the Daily Planet at that point? Because they modernized the Daily Planet, remember? They got the new computers and everything, and the email, and, the internets, and maybe even they have the Google at this point. But, I don't like the ticker tape idea.
Yeah, it's just one of those excuses to get Superman out of the picture. Right. So Lois can go and get in the middle of all this stuff that's going on with Dr. Mamba.
Yes.
Because Dr. Mamba has, he's got the clone of the president and the Secret Service guy. He sends the Secret Service guy over to kill Lois and her mother. Mm-hmm. Right, but they overpower him, right? And Lois finds a frog in his pocket. And she just, forgive the pun, leaps to the conclusion that this guy is a clone.
Well, they have the rapid healing thing, too. Because, they see the cut heal. And that's what the pet nerd had said.
And then she really gets with the time and does a bit of Googling. This is like Googling before Google was a thing. Mm-hmm. And she links the plan to kill the president back to Lex Luthor, who is pulling the strings from prison. And when that came up, I got excited. Because I was really like, John Shea's going to come back, isn't he? He's going to come back now. The cake and the flowers was fine, but you're really bringing up Lex Luthor behind everything here. He has to be coming back. So Lois warns the president about what's going on. Just as he sends off this pardon, which I kind of figured was for Lex.
Right, yes.
I was like, okay, so they've just taken over for the president. Mm-hmm. That has to be a pardon for Lex. Yep. Going out the door just as Lois shows up.
See, I didn't catch that until they said it, After that, I was like, oh, yeah. So you're a better detective than I am.
Well, it's another one of those things where it's just like a throwaway thing, and then it comes back later, and you're like, I knew it! I knew it! So Dr. Mamba tries to shoot Lois, but Superman, he gets back at the last second, of course. Mm-hmm. And his whole plot is revealed. But more bad news about the wedding, just as they show up. Lucy slugged a security guard at the airport. So she's in jail. She cannot be the maid of honor. There was this whole thing about her cousin Cindy really wanting the position, I guess.
Which, when in my memory, I didn't realize that was her cousin Cindy. When I was thinking back, when we started the whole thing, I was thinking that this was another actress who had been hired to play Lucy. So I was thinking this was the third actress to play Lucy, because we had two, but now this is someone totally different.
Yeah, this is what I was thinking. I was like, maybe they were holding out hope that they could keep that actress in the future, but she just wasn't available this time around. So let's just have it be another wayward thing that's happened for the wedding. Yeah. Oh my God. Mm-hmm. And then the minister, who I'm sure we'll talk about in the bylines.
Yes.
Hasn't shown up either. So, yes, luckily Perry was ordained at the First Church of Blue Suede Deliverance. Something really strange happens because the guy who works at the church, I don't know if he was a priest or whatever, he's like, oh, you just need to come in the back for a second and sign the wedding registry, which I thought was something you did after the wedding. Like, you say your vows, you say that, and then you sign the thing, and there's people there who witness it for you. But
exactly.
whatever. They needed to get her out of the room for a minute.
Yep.
To which I was like, suspicious.
See, again, you're a detective, man. I'm just like, oh, okay, whatever.
I'm on it.
And I've shot, like, I used to do videography, and I shot, I wouldn't say hundreds of weddings, but probably close to 100 weddings. And I know when they signed the marriage license, didn't think anything about it. Because I'm just watching the show, just enjoying it.
So the wedding happens, and it's beautiful. I loved it. But then they go there. Clark didn't marry Lois. She is a clone.
Dun, dun, dun.
And of course, Lex is behind the whole thing.
Yep, exactly.
Can you believe it? They did this.
They did it. Let me tell you, a lot of this comes up in the messages, the back issues. Holy cow. Do people talk about this? I'm fine. I'm okay with this. I know it seems cliche, it's a clone or it's a twin or it's something like that, but I'm fine with it. I remember like Houston Alley said, as a kid, watching it, she felt it went on for a long, long time. When I was a young man in college when this came out, I was thinking too, yeah, this is kind of dragging out. I'm getting annoyed with it, but I enjoyed this episode. I did not hate it. And I'm fine with this. The big reveal at the end, I'm like, oh yeah, that's right. I remember. I'm okay.
Yeah. I mean, I'm not saying I hate the episode at all. Right. It's actually a really good episode. I like it. But just this ending, I'm just so... I can't work out my feelings about it.
And I think that's how a lot of people feel about this third season and going forward. Like, it's kind of like, Sliders. There was that middle section of season 3 where it all went to crap. But there are a lot of people who still like the episodes that came after, including season 5. And we didn't hate on it as much as we thought we would either when we finally got there. It wasn't as terrible. So this is like the dividing point here, I think, for the Lois and Clark world. This is where things, for a lot of people, just went horribly, horribly wrong and never recovered, whereas other people really liked it. And I'm kind of, right now, I'm liking it. I'm enjoying it.
Yeah, and we're not going to get to it in the next episode, but it does make me wonder, what's Lois going to feel? Like, once all this is done with, is she still going to want to get married? Or is this going to be permanently put on hold? Or are they going to break up or something, Can she not forgive Clark for what he's done?
Right.
And can she believe that nothing happened between him and the clone?
Mm-hmm.
But we're going to learn more about this clone in the next episode, so...
Yes.
At least we're going to get that this week. But before we get there, some bylines. I have to say, the Metropolis Diamond Hotel, worst hotel ever. I mean, it's not a dive or anything. It's a really nice hotel. But if people don't check out, can they just stay in the room? Is there such a thing as a hotel squatter? They booked it for a certain time. Kick their ass out. Other people want to get in.
I mean, I don't know how it works. I mean, I guess they would just keep charging them people, like when they actually do go to check out, well, you actually stayed for this long and you have to pay for these extra days and there's there's a fee, there's a penalty fee. So, I don't know. I've never heard of hotel squatters, and it did seem weird to me that well, they haven't checked out, so you can't have the room. That makes sense, but then well, shouldn't they be checking out soon because that's their designated time?
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, it was weird to me too. Now, speaking of the hotel clerk, did you recognize him?
He's definitely that guy. I know that guy.
He is that guy. He was that guy just like last season, when he was showing Lois and Clark the caskets in the funeral home.
Oh, yeah. It was like Mr. Sunshine or Sunsweet or something, wasn't it? Yeah.
Same actor, or he has a twin, or he has a clone, maybe. And then, now, did you recognize Dr. Mamba?
No, that guy I didn't recognize.
Yeah, so Dr. Mamba is he could be like the biggest name that Lois and Clark have had, really, as a guest star. That's Tony Curtis, who was a big star back in like the 50s and 60s. What I remember him from is the movie Some Like It Hot with Marilyn Monroe.
Hang on, is he Jamie Lee Curtis's father?
Oh, I don't know.
That Tony Curtis?
It's possible. I never really, I didn't think about that. Let me see. Wikipedia says that he is the father of Jamie Lee Curtis. Yeah.
Nice.
So that's
I knew
Curtis.
I'd heard Tony Curtis before.
Yeah. So yeah, he was like, that's the movie I know him from, the Marilyn Monroe, Some Like It Hot movie. But he was also in a supporting role in Spartacus, which was a big hit for him as well. And like I said, he was big in the 50s and 60s, and he's made appearances in, movies and such since then, but that was his most popular time back in the 50s and 60s. I recognized him when he showed up. I was like, oh, that's that guy from that movie.
Obviously here by the mid-90s, he's probably just cashing in on a bit of that fame and paying the bills, being guest stars on TV shows.
Exactly.
Oh, very cool, very cool. Well, the other guest star we had on this episode too, Reverend Bob, played by Brett Garrett. And
exactly.
Sitcom Tom, you know who this guy is.
Of course, from Everybody Loves Raymond.
Yeah, he was Raymond's brother.
He was funny, because I remember seeing him before he was on that show. I remember seeing him in stand-up shows, like on VH1, they would have like a stand-up show on there. And I remember seeing him in there doing the whole Herman Munster impression and everything, and saying how he was actually the love child of Herman Munster and Greg Brady because of his looks.
That's a good joke.
It was pretty funny. Yeah, it was pretty funny. He was a funny guy.
Yeah, it was really random. Just this reverend who was like trying to get work as a comedian on a cruise line or something.
Right.
So he tries out his material at weddings, or just a bizarre little throw in. And I do have to... This is like the third time I've come across this in this show. Random housekeepers that just stroll on in. And this time, it's in the president's suite.
Right.
I mean, what kind of housekeeper can just stroll on into the president's hotel room? And she gets killed for it.
Yeah, no, when she came in and she just does the token scream and everything, I was like, oh, yes. Just another... They should have had that towels lady back in.
Exactly. That's what I was going to say. Wouldn't it be funny if she was that Swedish housekeeper?
Exactly. Just
Would
like
you
in
like some
Sliders,
towels?
we kept having Pavel back, in Sliders. Why not have her back?
We need a Diggs character in this show.
Right.
Not enough people going full Diggs these days.
Exactly.
Oh, what about the whole thing about them getting sappy over pet names for each other?
Yeah. With this, I agree with the network. It's getting a little bit much, I mean, I know what they're doing. I get it, but still, that's a little bit much.
Oh, God. Ugh, it was very, yeah. Anyway, so the rehearsal dinner getting cancelled. So Lois and Clark have pizza and do all the toasts themselves. How did you feel about this?
I mean, that's fine. Like I said, I would have liked to have seen the toast that they gave and everything, but it was an interesting way, of going about it, of cutting down the timing for the episode and everything. I think it was fine. It was well done, I thought. But yeah, it would have been nice. Like I said, I wanted to hear Perry give the speech. I wanted to hear an actual speech from Clark besides, I mean, his seemed kind of a cop-out. I'm just saying it. It's like, yes, it's romantic and everything. He said, I love you, Lois. That's great, but let's fill that up with some more stuff. Come on. There's more you can say besides that. It's like if you were going to write your own vows for your wedding and you get up there and she does her thing and then you say, I love you. That's it. And then that's your vows? Oh, she's not going to be happy about that.
Well, it makes me think, knowing the background of how they, wrote how everybody did speeches and stuff.
Right.
And then knowing also that at the last minute, the studio was like, the wedding's not going to happen. The actual wedding's not going to happen. Do you think maybe they rewrote this just for that? They're just like, well, if we do all this big, grand wedding preparation stuff now and they don't get married, can we do it again later and have it be as impactful? So let's cut it down a little bit.
Yeah, that's true. That's very true. That could be why. That makes sense.
Okay. So this other part, the random part where Dr. Mamba does the Mamba with a frog. What was this all about?
Okay, yeah. When this happened too, I was wondering what the actual hell is going on here? Like, why is he dancing with the frog, And it's like, he's not a clone himself, as far as we know. So why is he even worried about the frog? Why is he dancing with the frog? Put the frog down. That's food, Why are you dancing with food, basically? I don't know. It was very strange.
Do you think Tony Curtis was just like, well, my name's Dr. Mamba, so I have to do the Mamba at some point in this episode?
Yeah, I guess. It was just, it was a weird little moment that I was like, what the heck is this about?
Like, if he was doing the Mamba with Fred Willard or something, like, I could have been like, okay, whatever.
Yeah.
But he's doing it with a frog, so I'm like,
yes,
that's weird. And lastly, the conversation between Lois and her mother, as her mother threatens to not come to the wedding. And they talk it out about her controlling nature.
It was good.
Yeah, I didn't mind this.
Yeah, it's a come together for them, you know? It's like an understanding now, which is good.
As soon as she came, like, storming out, she's like, I'm not coming to your wedding, Lois. I'm like, okay, I need to talk this out. And it was good for them. It was good for their relationship.
Yeah, definitely.
It was very good. Okay, so let's get into this week's quote vote.
Oh, boy.
What's everybody standing around for? This is a newspaper, not happy hour at Buckingham Palace. What are we here, the Daily Planet? Or second stringers from the Weehawken Gazette?
Am I making myself perfectly clear?
I don't know, this has potential, so...
We had enough voters and everything? Or is this your own personal, you threw the casting vote?
Yeah, I did have to throw the casting vote this week.
Okay.
But I just, I think this will be interesting, to say the least. So let's get into it. Cue the music.
Kermit the Frog is freaking out with his fiancé, Mr. Movie Voice.
I knew something bad was going to happen. No matter what I do, there's always a part of me that wants to be doing something else.
Kermit, honey, nothing's going to happen.
What did you just say?
Kermit,
After that.
honey,
That's the first time you've ever called me that. Say it again.
honey.
That's amazing. I like it. I never thought of myself as a honey. What's happening to me? So you got any other names in mind?
Sweetheart, darling, my little tornado.
Oh, this is disgusting. Yay!
And scene. Oh, man.
Weird.
Yes, definitely. This one's weirder to me than the robot cyborg girl that we did last time.
I think the key was to try and play it like as straight as possible, you know, as little inflection on the response.
Right, yes.
And we had to go with Kermit, of course, this week. Going with the frog theme.
Yep.
All right, so let's get into the second episode discussion today. The episode is titled Double Jeopardy, written by Eugenie Ross Lemming and Brad Buckner, directed by Chris Long, and this originally aired February 18th of 1996.
Would you like some coffee? I know you like coffee. It's one of the many, many things I know about you.
Yeah, great. Lois, can we talk about last night?
Warmer than normal for this time of year.
Well, it depends on how you define warm.
Where are the cups? Where are the cups? Where are they?
Oh, they're right over there, to the right. We switched them around a couple weeks ago. Don't you remember?
Of course I remember. Why wouldn't I remember? To the right, you say. Oh, yes, there they are. Just where I left them.
Lois, we waited and waited for our honeymoon night for a long time. Because we wanted it to be one of the most special and memorable nights of our lives.
Are you saying it wasn't?
You fell asleep.
I was tired.
I understand that. I just hope that it wasn't something else, that's all.
Of course not. Honey, it was just a big day for me. Lots of pressure.
Oh, okay, you're right. Things will just get better when we get to Hawaii.
Oh, that's another thing. I canceled the hotel in Hawaii.
What?
Well, with Lex Luthor on the loose, I didn't think it was a good time to leave the paper. I didn't think you'd mind.
Lois, this is the kind of thing that we should talk about first.
Is it? How would I know? I've never been married. You have to give me time.
We both need time. That's why I think Hawaii is such a good idea.
Honey, you don't want to make me unhappy, do you? It's a big adjustment. I feel insecure. I don't want to leave town.
Lois, are you all right?
Having been stolen away from her wedding moments before walking down the aisle, Lois comes face to face with her captor, Lex Luthor, who has plans to escape with her to a hidden fortress in the Swiss Alps where they will live their lives together. Meanwhile, the Lois clone is surprised to discover that Clark is Superman and attempts to make a deal with Luthor, telling him she has a super secret, but he refuses. Lois uses their conversation to plan an escape and manages to run away, but gets hit by a car, falls to the ground, hits her head. But before the clone can shoot her, Lois runs away and hops into a van, but suffering from amnesia due to the head injury, she believes herself to be the heroine of her novel she had been writing, Wanda Detroit, and takes up residence in a place called Bibbo's, working as their lounge singer. Meanwhile, inspired by conversations with his parents and Perry, Clark comes to realize that his Lois is a clone and proceeds to search the city hopelessly. Returning home, he comes upon Lex Luthor waiting for him, revealing that the clone is on a mission to kill Lois so she can have Clark all for herself. Lex pleads with Clark to work together to save her, to which he reluctantly agrees. Jimmy shows up and gives information about Lois's whereabouts and details of her novel's characters: Clark, her boyfriend, whom infuriates her, and Kent, who she is madly in love with. Luthor uses this information to get to Lois first and convinces her that he is in fact Kent and is there to save her and take her away from Clark. On his orders, Lois goes to Clark to tell him it's over, that she doesn't love him, before driving away with Luthor, leaving Clark devastated, confused, and alone with the clone.
Clark, what are you doing here?
Here? Oh, you mean here, now. There was a tidal wave in the Philippines that needed looking into, so.
You and Lois had a fight. Well, don't let it get you down, son. Emotions run high on a honeymoon. Both good and bad. Sparks are gonna fly.
I wish.
Honey, you know you can talk to us about anything, right? What's on your mind?
Christmas tree lights.
Sorry?
You know how when the holidays come up and you're all excited about making your house just explode with warmth and love, so you go out and you buy a new box of lights and you hang them on the tree, and you're just waiting for that burst of warmth and love, and then you plug them in and nothing happens.
Nothing happens.
Nothing.
No sparks. No flickering. No electricity at all.
The power is out.
The two of you have more electricity than anyone I've ever seen, and I think we've pretty much beaten this metaphor to death.
I'm telling you, Mom, it's like Lois is another person.
So you're saying you're living with an imposter?
Alright, so, investigating this one, there's actually a fair bit for this one as well.
There is. Not as much as the first one, but there's still some. The opening scene was supposed to be slightly longer. Lois is supposed to look all dolled up and standing at the bed, looking at Clark. So a lot more camera work, probably fancy lighting and everything to make it look at all romantic, and Clark moves aside the bed sheets for her, and, he's like, I've waited so long for this moment, and she gets in the bed, and he's like, hello, Mrs. Kent, and he kisses her, so, and then it goes off like as it was aired, but yeah, just a little bit longer in the beginning scene there. There was supposed to be a scene with the church. They called him the church deacon that asked her to go sign the marriage license, and apparently there's supposed to be a scene with him carrying Lois. And since she's unconscious, he says, well, I'll have to carry you across the threshold, I guess. A little bit of, trying to hammer it in, exactly when she got taken,
right,
question.
Because it did take me a second to be like,
right,
who is Lex disguised as?
Exactly.
Oh, that guy.
Yeah, and as iReactions noted, he said, boy, Lex's costumes, his masks have gotten a lot better over the course of the seasons. When Clark comes home and he's looking at all the shopping that she's done, he's like, can we afford all this? The clone says, well, yes, I opened like 20 new charge accounts all across town. And he's like, what? And she's like, well, they asked me. It wasn't my idea. I'm very well thought of in this town, and he looks at her like disapproving, and she's like, don't be a drag. I've spent all day doing this. It's hard work. So, a little more humor injected into that scene. Yeah. When Martha says the imposter line, like, you think you're married to an imposter? Clark actually gets up and he starts scanning the glasses in the apartment for fingerprints to see, if they're different. But of course they match because it's a clone, so the fingerprints are going to be the same. And Martha's just like, she's like, oh, don't show Lois you're anxious. Just be protective, romantic, be all the stuff that made you guys fall in love, because they're not thinking that she's a clone. you know, obviously. There was no head striking the hydrant in the script. That wasn't written in there. Neither was Clark taking off the wedding ring later on. That wasn't in the script either. So they added that in later. It was improv or something. So at one point, you know, Clark goes into Perry's office and he talks to Perry, you know, about Lois's broken ankle. But in the script, it was a little bit longer scene because he comes in to Perry's office and just starts staring at Perry's pictures that he has, you know, just looking at them absentmindedly. And Perry's like, you know, Clark, I don't appreciate you coming into work and all, but why the heck aren't you two in Hawaii? There's something you want to talk about? And then they go into the whole scene. So just an extra line from Perry. There was extra dialogue when the clone holds up Lex with the gun. She says, you know, I want Clark. Lex is like, well, you didn't want him before. And, you know, she's like, well, you know, maybe if she's out of the way, maybe he'll want me. And Lex is like, he won't want you. And she's like, can't you be more encouraging? What kind of father are you? So a little more, you know, a little more humor from the clone.
Yeah, so it's a little bit creepy, though.
Yeah, a little creepy. And then finally at the end, Clark, you know, the way Clark walked off at the end, you know, like he pushes her hand away, the clone's hand away, and just walks off, you know, all disgusted. But I guess originally they were thinking that they would do a close-up on his face and he would just be staring at the clone, like, blankly, you know, instead of walking away the way he did. I like the way they did it.
Yeah,
you know,
I think
that
so.
was good.
My offer still stands.
No. You don't make deals with me, frog eater. You think I won't snap this traitorous little neck? I'm at rock bottom! The only thing I care about in this miserable existence is the woman I love, and neither you nor any force of nature is going to keep me from her.
Let go of me.
What have you done with her?
I lost her. Your precious is out there somewhere. Don't worry, I'll find her.
You most certainly will.
Find her and kill her.
No. What are you doing?
What do you think I am? That wimp?
Lois Lane. I'm a girl who gets what she wants, and I want Clark.
This is absurd. I am the creator. You are the creature. Now, I command you to give me the gun.
Don't be ridiculous. If I give you the gun, I can't shoot Lois. Duh.
You're not going to shoot Lois. You're not going to shoot me. You're going to give me the gun. Ah! Shot me!
Okay, so let's get into our main story. And the lead here, Lex Luthor lands Lois.
Nicely done.
Dun, dun, dun. Okay, so Clark is ready to, let's say, consummate the marriage. But the clone of Lois says, like, she's totally exhausted, so she's got to go to sleep.
Right.
Now, are we back to this being weird again?
I don't know. Like, yeah, I guess for a lot of people, yeah, it definitely gets a little weird here. I was okay with it, you know, because I know it's not the clone. I mean, I know it's not the real Lois. I know it's the clone. So it's not weird for me. You know, I just, I can sympathize with Clark. I'm like, oh, he's been waiting, you know, for so long. And then what a letdown. You know, that's all I felt. I didn't feel weird. I felt like it was just a letdown because, like, he's, like, so ready. And then, boom, it's not going to happen. He's like, well, I've waited this long, I guess. You know, I can wait longer.
Yeah, it must be so weird. Like, what would be going through his head? Because we know he's a virgin. We know it.
Yes.
He's been waiting for Lois. And here they are. The moment has arrived. They've been talking about it for, you know, however long they've been together, really.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
And she just doesn't want to do it.
I know.
And it's going to get weirder as we go along. But yeah, I mean, yeah, that's anticlimactic, right? Like, what do you do in that situation? Your new wife doesn't want to sleep with you?
I know.
Ugh. But in the meantime, we're at an abandoned church, and yeah, that church deacon guy rips off his face and reveals that it's Lex Luthor.
Yes.
John Shea himself.
And he's back with full hair, too.
I know. What's with that?
I don't know. Like, some people theorize that it grew back, or I'm thinking maybe it's just a wig. Like, he's that vain that he would get a wig done.
Well, he seems to be able to pull a lot of strings from prison, so I'm sure he could get some Rogaine or whatever.
Yeah. There you go.
Or perhaps John Shea just didn't want to shave his head or wear a ball cap.
Yeah. I mean, as much as I like the classic look of Lex Luthor, you know, I like him with I think this Lex Luthor works great with the hair.
Exactly. John Shea's made it his own, and the bald, I mean, it was fine for, you know, the cryogenic suspension coming back kind of thing to pay homage, but yeah, this Lex Luthor, he's different, and we're back to that, that look of Lex, and of course the acting caliber.
Oh yeah,
is right up there. We got that cachet back on the screen for our villain. So while this is going on, the clone has Clark very concerned as he questions her about that lacklustre evening, and she's also cancelled their honeymoon, saying that she wants to stay in town because of the news of Lex's escape with the phony pardon and all that. So he's really starting to be like, what the hell? And Lex thinks that Lois still wants him, and he's going to hold her captive forever.
Yeah.
We're going to go to the Swiss Alps, and I'll make you love me.
Yeah, this is something that iReactions had commented on. When he sent me his notes, he's talking about how his character, you know, has really changed, you know, over the whole course. Now his obsession now, you know, like he said he's loved Lois, you know, but his obsession now is like he just wants her no matter what. It doesn't matter if she, you know, like as we'll find out, if she has amnesia, if she's forced into it, if she doesn't know what's going on. He just wants her, you know? And like, I know that we said that it seems like he really loves her. I think it's gotten to the point where he just wants to possess her, you know? I don't think, he says it's about love, but I think his view of love has been twisted, or he just never really knew what it was. I think he's interested in possessing her the same way he had possessed all those, you know, secret, paintings and, you know, statues and everything. Like he's used to possessing things. And at some point he decided that she is the one thing that he needs to possess to be okay in this world. You know, like he's got really twisted.
Yeah, he's gone off the deep end where he can't even fathom that she could not be in love with him. And the fact that she doesn't love him doesn't even concern him anymore. He's like, well, you don't love me? Well, I'm going to have to make you love me.
Exactly. Eventually you will. You know, you're just going to be with me forever, and that's it. You're going to, eventually you will love me. You know, like, I think this could be very, like, campy. You know, this could be like that villain that's just like, you know, twirling his mustache, you know, while the damsel is tied to the tracks.
Exactly. Like the prankster or something, you know. Let's freeze her and give her a kiss.
Exactly. But iReaction said, and I believe as well, this the way he acts, you know, his acting just gives it some kind of appeal. You know, it's not campy. It's not it's not too silly. It's like you believe, you know, this is how he is now. I like the way that this is coming off here. You know, he doesn't have his, we'll find out, but he doesn't have his money that he used to. You know, but he has this place over in the Swiss Alps, and he's going to take her away, and we're just going to be there forever, just you and me, and that's how it's going to, you know, that's how life is going to be for you from now on. It's a weird change for him from being on top of the world, you know, having everything he wants, but now this is just the one thing that he's just obsessing over.
Well, there is that second thing as well, because the clone does show up at his hideout, and this gives Lois little hope that she'll ever get rescued. You know, Clark thinks that there's nothing wrong because Lois is still there. And of course, he wants to use this clone to get closer to Clark, in turn getting closer to Superman, and he can destroy him once and for all. And the clone quickly figures out that Clark is Superman, of course. You know, it's not a secret between he and Lois.
Right, yeah.
And she starts getting a bit more bold about things. And of course, she doesn't tell Lex this secret.
Right.
She wants money. She wants the power that comes with being the wife of Superman. And, yeah, you know, this is just one of those minor flaws in Lex's plans. It's just going to be a thorn in his side. It's very cool.
Yeah, no, it was well done. I like that all the clones follow the same pattern. They're all very childlike, you know, because they've just been born, you know, and that even goes back to Batman, because that clone, too, was very childlike. So all the clones that they have are always very, you know, like little kids and everything. So the little kid wants what they want.
And he does lay out this plan to rebuild his empire without the guise of being a respectable company. He actually says, based on pure evil, I will be who I actually am, because everybody knows now, so I can just be upfront and evil with my empire.
Exactly. Well, I mean, yeah, it makes sense. You know, that's part of, like, that's why I said it could be campy. You know, it could be very campy, like Dr. Evil, you know, like that style from Austin Powers. You know, you give me $1 million, you know, but it's not campy. It's like you believe this is what he's going to do.
Yep, makes sense. It goes back to that cachet that John Shea has. He makes you believe it. But, of course, Clark quickly figures out what's going on with Lois, you know?
Well, yeah.
She's out there spending all the money. She doesn't want to sleep with him.
Mm-hmm.
He knows what's going on.
Well, he x-rays the ankle to see if there was a break, you know?
And I love that he can't prove this to anybody else.
Mm-hmm.
Perry, Jimmy at the Planet, you know, they think he's actually assaulting her at one point.
Yeah, I know. That was a good scene. You know, it was like, geez, you're in such a, like, you know, it's like, what can you do? There's nothing you can say that would convince him that isn't Lois.
Yeah, and it all, you know, it works out pretty well for the clone Lois, because Lex's big thing is that he has put aside $200 million in Lois's name that she didn't know about. It was his way of, I guess, hiding it. You know, he can say all he wants that it was supposed to be a wedding present or whatever.
Right.
He was hiding money.
Yeah, exactly.
But he needs Lois to be able to get it. And this gives the clone the leg up that she needs. And Lois attempts to call for Superman while this is all going on, but Lex drugs her. But before she passes out, she kicks him in the face and escapes. She gets like a really good kick in his face, too.
Oh, she does, yeah. It was really good. Good escape, you know?
But she's stumbling around. She stumbles upon Superman, but before she can yell out, because she's all drowsy and stuff, she falls over and she knocks her head against a fire hydrant. And this is where it really starts to go crazy. The clone tries to take Lois away at gunpoint, and she runs off and escapes in a van owned by this guy called Red Dixon. And he has a name because we need to know that the clone knows who she escaped with. It's got like a big, what was it, like plumbing or something on the side?
Yeah, Red's plumbing or Red's something like that, yeah.
And she starts to take on this persona. And earlier in the episode, we got the drop line that Jimmy had stumbled across Lois's famed novel that we haven't heard for a whole season. Like, I think they brought it up in season 1. I don't think they even mentioned it.
Yeah, season 1 when Bureau 39 came in and she was worried about her computer. Yep.
And her novel is titled The True and Amazing Adventures of Wanda Detroit. So she, in her hazy amnesiac state, thinks she is Wanda Detroit.
Yes.
And the whole thing with Wanda is that she is torn between two men. A man that she loves but cannot have, named Kent, and the sweet, loving guy named Clark.
I think that was cool. I think that was a cool way to do it. You know, like even back then in season 1, she's like trying to figure out what the heck's going on with Clark. I like that.
Mm-hmm. Of course, Jimmy comes to tell Clark all about this just after Lex has shown up at his place telling him that he needs his help because, yes, he kidnapped Lois and he's very sorry, but now she's out there and who knows what's going on. But as soon as he hears this story, all bets are off.
I know. I was like, damn it.
What a dick.
I know, because they had a good moment, you know, Clark and Lex, you know, where they're talking about Lois's great qualities, you know, and they have this moment where they realize it's like we are both in love with her for the right reasons, it seems like. You know, I still don't think he was. I think Lex is just a good actor. He can recognize her good qualities, but I don't think that's why he really wants her. But anyway, that's beside the point. They have that moment, you know, where it seems like, all right, fine, we will help each other, you know, to get her back. And then he does this. And you knew I knew, like when Lex is asking him to trust him, you know, holding out his hand, you know, and like Clark, he never shook his hand, you know, but I was like, that's good. You can't trust him. He's a snake.
And they tie in this whole thing about how she gets a job as a lounge singer.
Yes.
At Bibbo's.
Yeah, Bibbo's.
A nice touch. They've always had like an underlying kind of noirish thing going here.
Yeah. Uh-huh.
And this really plays into that because, you know, it's a storybook character and it's kind of like the exaggerated world that Wanda Detroit would live in. So yeah, she gets this job as a lounge singer and of course she's very good at it. We've seen Lois sing before up on stage and she kind of relishes the opportunity to be doing this. And I thought it was a little bit flimsy that Red calls up the Daily Planet to tell them that like this woman you're splashing all over the papers who's supposed to be missing is actually my girlfriend, Wanda. And I'm pretty sure this guy's trying to kill her, so leave us alone.
Exactly. That's a bit much.
Drawing them right to her.
Yeah. They had to find a way to get the information, to Jimmy. So they had to, that's just what they came up with. There had to have been another way, but this is what we got. It's ham-fisted, but it works, It's fine.
And the clone really goes off the deep end, too, because she actually shoots Lex as well before he has a chance to show up at Clark's. So that was pretty good, too. Like, we saw with the Vat Man clone and everything, like, he betrayed Lex, but he never attacked him.
Right, yeah.
So, yeah, I thought it was good that he actually got what was coming to him as well.
You think, he would learn after all this. All these clones, they turn on him. So, come on. He needs to, build in some kind of, fail-safe for the clone, so that it says a word and they stop doing whatever they're doing.
Yeah, and of course Clark shows up to Bibbo's, and, once he tells them, hey, I'm Clark, they're like, oh, you're that dude that Wanda's trying to, stay away from. And it actually leads to a pretty funny scene of them trying to beat him up.
Yeah, that was pretty good. He's like, guys, But I thought it was funny. I know that it's for the story, but if you were meeting someone that you had never met before, like he did, it's weird that he would just say, my name is Clark. Why wouldn't he say, my name is Clark Kent? I'm from the Daily Planet, or something like that.
It would make sense,
Yeah.
And not only that, but say, Lois is my fiance. And
right, exactly.
But still, at the same time, they probably wouldn't believe him.
Yeah, true.
They know that she's just running from a guy named Clark, so it works.
Exactly.
For me. I go with it. And then Lex shows up.
Yep.
Knowing what he knows, tells her that, Wanda, baby, it's me, Kent.
Uh-huh.
We can be together. But then it gets flimsy again. Because in the matter of, the minute or so that they're together, he somehow manages to convince her to pretend to be Lois Lane, because Clark thinks you're Lois Lane, but you're not.
Right.
And he thinks my name is Lex, so how about we put on this charade and he'll leave us alone? Right. I was like, how did he manage to relay all this information so she can convincingly tell Clark that she's leaving with Lex? It was a little bit ham-fisted.
Yeah. I could, what I see is, he had, I know it seems like a minute, but I'm thinking maybe they, you know how time works in TV shows, sometimes it can be stretched out. The bomb's going to go off in 1 minute, but it actually takes 10 minutes for the whole, for that whole scene to go around. I think that since she's playing out this role of Wanda, when he shows up as, she saw Clark, and she's like, oh my God, Clark, and that starts bringing in this flood of, memories that she's written about. So when she sees Kent, that brings back another flood of memories that she has written about. So the memories with Kent are good because that's the one that she really loves and wants to be with, whereas the ones about Clark are just very frustrating. So she's already predisposed, I think, to believe Kent over anybody. So I think that's why he's so easily able to say, all right, look, we want to be together, right? That's what we've always wanted, So in order to do that, we have to convince Clark that you do not love him. So he, for some reason, he thinks that I'm, my name is Lex. Maybe he said he was undercover or something and this, and I don't know. I'm sure he has plenty of excuses why, but I think she's just predisposed to believe him because he is Kent. He is the one that she wants, that Wanda wants in the novel. So I think that's why it's so easy to convince her.
I just wish there was something that sort of showed us why she wanted to play into this scenario. How did he convince her to do this? So, but overall, I thought it was a great episode.
Oh yeah,
it was just like,
no, I thought it was really good. This whole, it all comes together right there at the end, and it's like you knew Lex was going to do something to betray Clark, and when he gets that information, you're like, oh, this is it, And what can he do? It's like, what can he do at this point?
Yeah, it's crazy. Just, as disappointed as I am that the actual wedding didn't go off. This is just like, oh, she's leaving with Lex. I never thought this would ever happen.
Right.
But they've managed to pull it off. It's crazy.
Yep. Yeah, they did.
It was so good.
And we'll get into a little bit more about the wedding and feelings and all that stuff in the back issues, because there's a lot. There's a lot.
All right. Well, let's just get through some bylines then. All right. Awkward. Clark talks sex with his parents again.
Hey, they have a very open relationship. You know, like they can talk about anything. That's healthy. That's healthy, sir.
He's just using this thinly veiled Christmas lights metaphor.
Yes.
And Martha calls out that it's a metaphor as well. She's like, I think we've gone through this metaphor as much as we can. We just think, yes.
Exactly.
I think we've talked about sex with your parents enough.
Yes. It's always uncomfortable, but it's good to see that Superman can do it.
I know. It'd be less weird if you just like talked to Jimmy or Perry about it, you know?
Yeah.
A buddy
true.
rather than your parents. Ugh.
Right. Yeah, that's true. That's true.
Clark gets a montage to If You Were Me and I Were You, a country song by I don't know who.
It's actually not a country song. You know, I had to look it up because I was like, what the heck is this song? Oh my God. I listen to, like, sometimes they just hire these writers to write songs in a style for a certain scene, for movies and TV. You know, like, they're not real songs. I saw this movie a long time ago, and there were these two great songs, and I was like, oh, those are awesome songs. But I could not find them, like, for purchase anywhere. You know, I looked in the credits, and I found out who wrote them. And I looked online for the writer, the singer. I could not find them anywhere. I eventually wound up in contact with the writer of the two songs, and you know, he was like, oh yeah, I actually do a lot of stuff like that. I write songs. You know, movie studios come to me and they ask me to write a song in this style or that style, and I just do it. It has to sound, you know, like a song that could have been a hit on the radio, but it's not. You know, it's like, and because it's cheaper than paying for the rights to the real song. And so he actually sent me copies of the song because he said, you're not going to find these anywhere. So here you go. You know, and when I heard this song, I was like, this is probably one of those songs, isn't it? You know, that someone said, can you write a song like this? You know, and I'm like, ugh. So I looked it up and I found out that it is way the opposite of that. This is a song by Elton John.
For real?
For real. For real. That was Elton John. I was like, holy crap. That's not a great song.
Well, it's got that country twang to it anyway.
Yeah. It's just, you know, it's Elton. He's a chameleon. He changes.
Well, I was going to say that this song was no R.E.M., but...
No, definitely not. Definitely not. Like I said, I never heard of it before, but yeah, it's called If You Were Me is the name of it.
Wow.
The song. Elton John and, let's see, it says here Chris Ray. So maybe that's where you get the country twang from. Maybe that was someone else who sort of sang with him on it and gave him a little bit of a twang. Like I said, I never heard the song before. Yeah, it was pretty rough. So we get this whole thing, you know, where Lex has stashed away $200 million in Lois's name. When he came back from the dead, they were all talking about how he had no money. You know, why couldn't he have somehow gotten into that account back then, you know, when he first came back from the dead? That would have helped a little bit. So it's a bit of a retcon, you know, that he always had this money stashed away.
Well, he's doing like all this stuff from prison too, like pulling all kinds of strings. So
yeah, exactly. So then we also have, I thought about this too, as iReactions noted it, but as Clark calls 911 and she's like, what's your emergency? Da, 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 and he just hangs up the phone. I'm like, that's not how 911 works, though. They're gonna call back and they're gonna trace the call and they're gonna come find you, you know, or they're gonna try to find you, because that's how 911 works. They assume that if you call 911, there's an actual emergency, and even if you get disconnected, they're gonna find out where that call came from. So it didn't quite happen in the episode, obviously, for dramatic purposes.
I always heard this thing about, like, 911 doesn't call you back because, like, maybe you called 911, but you're in a situation where you can't talk, like someone's going to attack you or you're hiding from someone.
Right.
So if 911 calls you back, then they could actually do some damage.
They could, but I think there's some kind of requirement where they have to, no matter what, they have to respond to that call somehow. You know, like I think that's how
they could send like a black and white over to do
exactly,
welfare.
Yeah,
check,
they gotta do something.
Yeah,
and then finally, I'm glad to see Bibbo You know, he's not a major character, but he's been in the comics. He was always, you know, like this like kind of like, it seemed like a dock worker. He was big and burly in the comics, and he always wore like a Superman sweatshirt, and he had like a little snow cap on, and you know, he wasn't the smartest individual, but he always tried to help out Superman whenever he could. He was just he was a good-natured guy. So I was glad to see him in the series. I'd kind of forgotten that he would show up, and I don't know if he shows up again after this whole storyline is over, but I was glad to see Bibbo. Bibbo, I think his last name is Babowski. Bibbo Babowski.
Yeah, I do like when you manage to like bring up where characters do derive from the source material. So that's pretty cool.
Yeah, Red is made up, I'm pretty sure. but Bibbo, yeah. Bibbo's been around.
Red's mullet.
Red's mullet, yeah. Red's mullet services.
Angel, it's me. The man you love. Wanda. It's Kent.
You're Kent?
The man you love and thought you couldn't have? Well, good news. You can.
I sure hope this isn't a dream.
It's a dream come true. One person stands in our way.
I know Clark is in there.
He's got it in his crazed head that I'm the one that's no good for you. But everything will be fine if you do exactly as I say.
All right, well, let's get into the back issues, eh?
All right, so like I said, there's a lot. There's a lot going on for these back issues here. We'll start with the first episode. Just make it simple. People were worried, you know, when they revealed that the clone was, or the Lois was a clone, and they were like major worried that Clark was going to lose his virginity to a clone.
Yep, I thought the exact same thing.
Like they were freaking out like big time. They're like, I can't believe this is going to happen. Yeah, so it was pretty interesting. They were talking about how it just won't be the same now. You know, like they've already had the marriage. So they've done that scene already. And to do it again, it would seem, I don't know, not as, what's the word? Not as impactful, I guess. You know, because you've already done the marriage. So now it's like, ugh. You know, we're going to do it again because we have to. So they didn't like that. They were trying to reason when the switch happened. You know, say, well, maybe the switch, you know, between Lois and the clone happened after the wedding. So he really did marry the real Lois. So that's still a good moment. It's still a good wedding because it was the real Lois. Like they're just trying to, it's like the whole, the steps of death, you know, trying to accept it. It's like acceptance and anger, you know what I'm talking about?
Reasoning, all that.
Reasoning. So like right now they're bargaining, trying to reason how this could all still work out just fine. So it was good.
Pretty obvious it happened just before the wedding.
Yeah, it was.
She was pulled aside, and
other people they liked the episode. They liked the floating that he was doing while he was watching TV. The pizza dinner and the toast was a good scene. Clearing the traffic jam was a great visual, and they really liked the tension between the mother and Lois. That was a nice little touch in there to try to work that in. I felt that there were hints of mall rats in this comment that someone had said.
Yeah,
they were talking about how if Clark and the clone are going to consummate the marriage, this person was saying, you know what? It's okay if Clark and the clone do it because the clone is probably the only woman in the world who could actually survive sex with Superman. Since she's a clone, you know, she has that regenerative, healing powers or whatever. What else could, and this is kind of icky, but you know, what else could, who else could survive a quote session with Superman? You know, who is like super strong, they even went there. They even said someone who has super sperm that would bounce around with super strength. So it made me think of Mallrats. This person's his comment.
Mallrats was a bit more in your face about how they talk about it.
Just a little bit. Just a little bit. Someone else was worried that it was going to become a moonlighting show, where the leads are not allowed to get together, and then they go back and forth and they're teasing and flirting all the time, but it never actually happens. And they didn't want that to happen. I wouldn't want that to happen either. I remember watching Moonlighting too. Then someone else said that Perry's wedding, probably isn't valid because the church that he got the marriage license from is defunct. So it's probably not, legal. Also, Clark entered the marriage under false pretenses. He thought it was the real Lois, and then someone else said, well, and the clone is technically a baby because she's less than a year old. So she can't be married.
And is she technically a person? I mean, there's
exactly.
ethical question.
So they're trying to just bargain. They're really trying to find reasons why this is just not, what actually happened. They want it to be different. I will say that even if the church is defunct, anybody can marry anybody else from what I understand. Because we've been looking into this. My girlfriend and I have been trying to find ways to save money on a big wedding and all that. And what I've read is that you don't even have to be ordained to marry someone. It's not like a requirement depending on what state you're in, like, where you live. So even with them saying Perry's church is defunct, it's still not necessarily means that you're not married.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure you can do like a temporary thing as well, where it's like,
right.
My brother asked me if I would marry him and his wife.
Exactly.
So
yeah.
I can get a temporary license to marry somebody.
Right. Yeah. So it depends on where you live, but there's different rules for, who can marry you and who can't. But in general, it's I was surprised. I was very surprised. It's very open to, who can do what. So it's pretty neat. There was one other thing that I thought was a neat idea. This is, of course, before we find out more about the clone, but they said, what if, because now we have Lois and we have the clone. We have an extra Lois. What if the clone ends up on the alt timeline where Lois died? I think that could be a neat way to go. I think that's a neat thing. I like it.
She's a bit wishy-washy, but
yeah.
I'm sure old Clark could make it work.
Yeah. And Clark's different over there too, so he's not the same as our Clark. So it could work out.
He did have a thing for Lana Lang, so.
Right.
I guess even a clone Lois would be a step up from that crazy woman.
Exactly. All right. So let's see. It's for the Double Jeopardy. All right. People were like, so very happy that Lex and Clark realized they have something in common. They thought this was a neat scene, It's like they have something in common. They thought Terry did great with she had 3 different roles. She had Wanda, she had Lois, and she had the clone, and she did a great job of differentiating between all of them. And I agree, true. She did really good. Someone had said, "Oh, great! Everything is such a mess for Lois and Clark. To make it work, it's going to take a miracle." And I loved it. They thought everything is so messed up. It's so cool. They liked that it was all messed up. They were very excited. They can't wait for next week. They're very excited about the whole storyline. They love that part with Lex where he says, "This is war." I'm like, that was a good part. That was definitely a good part. Someone else said that they thought Terry did great, in her various roles, but they weren't sure that Dean could do the same. That his acting ability wasn't up to that par yet. And they said, I kind of want to see, Dean's mind or Clark's mind transferred into Lex's body and see if Dean could pull off acting, like Lex, smoking cigars and acting like Lex does, as well as Terry did. And that came from, her name was Rachel Smith, the person who posted that on the old forums.
Yeah, we have seen Dean Cain try to play some alternate character. I guess the best was probably that alternate Clark.
Yes, that was the best.
Yeah, but beyond that, the Batman clone, that was weird.
Yeah.
He had to do that I Love Lucy thing, and
that was not good. That was not a good Ricky Ricardo impersonation. So someone else said, despite the silliness of this whole amnesia thing, they agree it was a well-done episode, and it does make you want to come back and see what's going to happen next. You can't just leave it. It's like, what's going to go on? But I like this. They said, but Lois is a terrible bad fiction writer. She's just awful at writing fiction. She sounds like a really bad detective novel from the 1950s. And I agree, I agree. And they asked, they had a discussion about how could she be such a bad writer, but yet win these Pulitzers? I thought right away, when they asked that question, I was like, well, because of this. And then someone else had answered, well, she wins Pulitzers for newspaper writing, which is factual based. It's not supposed to be creative. It's not supposed to be flowery and interesting necessarily to read. It's just supposed to be presenting the facts for you. And novel writing is a whole different thing. And someone had said they have friends who are newspaper writers themselves, and when they try to write creatively, it's the hardest thing for them because they're not used to that type of writing. So it makes sense, that she would write a bad novel. Like she's pulling in all these tropes from these detective movies and books that she may have read. Like I live down by the docks, and a rough life for me. It's just like all these typical things you see in detective novels. So it makes sense to me.
I know, it'd be like going up to someone who's like a really good bread baker and just expecting that they could run a kitchen.
Yeah, exactly.
Just because you can make bread doesn't mean you can just cook everything and be really good at it.
People were really ticked off, like that. Now they were ticked off about the wedding already and getting married to a clone, but they were really ticked off at Clark for being so stupid that he didn't know that he was married to a clone. Like there was a lot of posts about this. Like they were just livid that he could not tell that this was a clone, because they talked about how, that episode where he was in a coma and they had a connection so that when he came out of the coma, she realized it, Lois realized it, so they feel like there's this connection between the two of them. And now that there's a clone in the mix, they're like, how could he not know? There's like no connection. How could he have been so stupid? And they started talking about how identical twins have tried tests and pranks where they try to be each other. And there's always something different from each other. That's just, it's easy to tell that it's not the one that you're actually with when it comes to that whole thing. So they were mad about that. What do you think about that?
Yeah, he does kind of just go into like a whole woe is me thing for an extended period there where he's just like, Lois won't have sex with me and she's really weird, and you're like, come on, like she changed like almost immediately. Like,
yeah, exactly.
He would be sus on her from the get-go.
Yeah, and they were like, why didn't he use his super senses? Or why, like, his super senses are just kind of there. I don't know if they're always super turned on. No, that doesn't sound good, but you get the point. Like he couldn't smell the frogs or hear the frogs croaking, in the other room. It's like, you're Superman, come on.
Lois, you get some frog on your breath.
They were also upset about how Clark just sort of stood there at the end while Lex drives off. And it's like, this is all so soap opera, it's like recycled storylines from soap operas that have been done to death, and they said, can Clark be redeemed for this? And one person was just like, he was like, nope, that's it. I'm done with this.
Yeah, I mean, he could have showed up at Bibbo's as Superman rather than going as Clark. So,
but luckily, Zoomway was on these forums and she came to the rescue, and she had a long post about, well, Clark doesn't know what's wrong with Lois. He has no idea. Maybe Lex kidnapped Lucy, which is why she wasn't at the wedding, and told her, if you'll do what I say or Lucy's going to be dead, which is something that he would totally do. And Lois just trusts one person right now, and that's Kent, who is Lex. And, Clark wants to find out why. So yeah, Clark could have taken him to jail, put Lois in therapy, but how anticlimactic would that be? Then she said, Clark doesn't then learn the fundamental truth. And I thought this was really good. I didn't think about this. Did he get Lois by default because Lex was arrested during their wedding, when he was found out to be a criminal? She said that Lois needs to let Clark know that she chooses Clark over Lex because she's always been hung up on Clark, even during her wedding to Lex. It brings the story full circle. In the Phoenix episode, Lex tells him, Lex tells Lois, tell him you once really loved me, and she doesn't say anything. She's silent. How does Clark take that? She doesn't call the cops on Lex saying that, oh, he's suffered enough. How does all that make Clark feel? So they're like, he needs to win. Clark needs to win completely over Lex, not by default, not just by the fact that Lex is out of the picture. That's why he gets Lois. No, he needs to know that Lois really does choose him over Lex.
He can't use his physical strength in any way to force her into anything. All right, so in our next issue, we will be discussing Seconds and Forget Me Not. I've got no ideas.
Seconds, obviously, this whole thing is going to continue. We're going to, hear more about what's going on with Lex and Lois and where this goes and what does Clark do now, So Seconds, I'm not sure if that has to do with time or if it's just more reference to the clone thing. I'm thinking the clone thing.
Or maybe like a play on words. It could have two different meanings. Being
right,
that it's, seconds, doubles, time, all that stuff together.
Yeah, exactly. And then Forget Me Not. Now, I remember what's coming, and I know, like, we have this whole thing with the amnesia, and I'm thinking right now she has amnesia, but I know that I don't want to spoil anything. I don't want to say anything about what I think it's going to be because it would spoil what's going to happen in that episode, I believe. So I got an idea of what's going to happen because I remember it. So.
Maybe best just to keep it under wraps for now.
Exactly. So no spoilers. But whatever it is, we'll find out next week because that's it for this issue of the Rewatch Podcast. Keep up with listener interaction by liking our Facebook page at facebook.com/Rewatch Podcast or facebook.com/Lois and Clark Rewatch, and follow the show on Twitter at Rewatch Pod. Don't forget you can visit our webpage at rewatchpodcast.podomatic.com, which has links to some of our favorite sites there, such as the aforementioned forums at the zoomway.net, the folc.wiki.com, and the Superman homepage.com. And we also have links, of course, to our archive of film rewatch episodes.
And I know I've been talking about, like, we're going to be changing servers and all that stuff. Guys, there's stuff happening in the background. And we'll announce it soon enough. But we have plans to restore the whole feed because we know a bunch of the Sliders episodes are missing and whatnot. But yeah, we're going to get there. Yes. But as always, you can shoot us an email, record a voice message, send it over to the rewatchpodcast@gmail.com. If you've enjoyed the show, please give us a rate and review on iTunes. 4 or 5 stars will only take a second. Write something nice. And of course, you can help support us by heading over to the Rewatch Podcast Patreon page, which is patreon.com/Rewatch Podcast, where you can make a monthly contribution as little as $1. And of course, our whole back catalogue is up on YouTube, so you can catch every single episode we've ever done right there. Just search Rewatch Podcast and subscribe today. All right. Well, thank you for joining me for these 2 episodes, Tom.
Yep.
And I will just say until next time, do you know how to spell stupid? Y-O-U.
Oh, I'm hurt. We gotta fly.
The Rewatch Podcast is not associated with Warner Brothers Television, ABC, Gangbuster Films Incorporated, or Roundelay Productions.
Don't believe everything you see on TV.
The use of any and all copyrighted material is only for parody, news analysis, critique, or educational purposes as provided in United States Code Title 17, aka Fair Use.
Let's get legal on this.
Music provided by Kevin McCloud at incompetech.com.
Great shades of Elvis.
Copyright 2016, The Rewatch Podcast.
Where are your beepers? We'll be in touch.
Hi, Rewatch Podcast listeners. I'm Corey.
I'm Tom.
And I'm Nathan.
First off, let me say that we have all had a blast doing the Rewatch Podcast. Every week, we put out another episode for free for you. And although we enjoy these discussions with each other, we truly do this for you guys out there in podcast land.
That's right, Corey. But we are here today to tell you about Patreon. Every week, there are costs involved in podcasting about film and television, including hosting and bandwidth charges, our own personal internet usage, and film or show rentals and purchases. So, we're asking you to become a Patreon supporter.
If you can afford as little as $1 to throw our way per month, it would really help us keep the lights on. And if you want to send $100 our way every month, we wouldn't turn that down either. But it's your choice, and we appreciate the support you bring.
As always, we strive to bring you the best quality shows we can create, and we hope that you enjoy them. So head on over to patreon.com/Rewatch Podcast to become one of our patrons and show your support for the Rewatch Podcast.
And if we get enough patrons, we may even be able to produce exclusive content just for the supporters in the form of simply getting episodes before the main feed release, or even bonus film discussion episodes as a thank you for your support. The website again is patreon.com/Rewatch Podcast.
Thanks, everyone.